Hi, today we're making beef goulash and Spaetzle. For this, we need pepper, salt, flour, eggs, parsley, lemon, onions, butter, nutmeg, garlic, sweet paprika, hot paprika, bay leaf, tomato paste, caraway, beef, broth, red wine, and oil. First, I'm going to cut the beef. Here I have a nice piece of shoulder that I bought whole. I don't really like having the butcher cut it for me because they usually cut it into uneven pieces. I don't like that, so I always buy it whole. There's still a tendon attached up here. We can trim it a bit. Now, if you look inside, you can see it clearly. If you have a bit of a tendon here in the middle of the meat, that's no problem at all. That's connective tissue and it breaks down. You don't need to worry about that. That means we make a cut just below the tendon here. Very thin, and then we turn the meat onto the tendon, and then with firm pressure on the knife, just separate this tendon along the board. So always keep the knife down on the board. Keep the knife relatively flat. And then we waste as little meat as possible. Yeah, just trim that off a little bit. Okay. And now we're going to cut the meat into cubes. We shouldn't forget that the meat will shrink a little later on. So it loses about 30 to 35% of its weight. So let's cut the cubes a bit bigger and then later they'll be just perfect for eating. About 2 to 3 centimeter pieces. You can see that clearly. That's a tendon which isn't suitable for quick frying. That's also a braising meat. That means it only gets tender when you cook it for a longer period of time. And now we'll just cut this into little cubes like this. Cut that in half as well. Tendons and a bit of gristle don't matter in goulash, since long cooking makes everything tender as butter. You can just leave that on, you don't need to worry about it. That looks nice. The meat is nicely marbled. That means when it's well marbled like this, a bit like that. If it has veins like that, it will be extra tender later, since that's where the fat and connective tissue are. It breaks down during cooking, resulting in a buttery, tender goulash. Now in here. Now I'll chop the parsley in a moment. This parsley has thin stems, so I don't need to pluck it carefully. The stems are edible too. If the stems are thick, pluck the leaves off cleanly. I'll cut off the stems now. Then I bundle the parsley. And now I just cut it into fine strips here with a sharp knife. And then I go over it again with the knife and just chop over it 2 or 3 more times. You don't need to pulverize it. Roughly chopping is enough. It will taste better afterwards and look nicer. Okay, that's enough. Next, I'll cut up the garlic and a bit of lemon zest. I think it gives a really great flavor. I have an organic lemon here, an untreated one. We need the zest, which is important. And now I'll just cut 2 thin strips of the peel without taking the white part. There are a lot of aromatics in there, so use just a little bit. That's enough for us. And now we'll try to cut that as finely as possible. First, really thin slices straight down and then cut them into really tiny cubes. Because it's not nice if you bite into a piece of lemon peel. Then the garlic. I cut off both ends. Peel it thinly and always make sure to remove the sprout from the garlic, especially if you're adding it whole to the dish. The sprout is inside. That means just cut it in half once. Check inside. If you don't see anything green, it's fine. Then we place it on the cut side and just slice it into thin pieces here. Make a crosswise cut. And then slice it finely as well. I can mix that with the lemon zest now, since I'll add both to the goulash together later. And I'll put that on here as well. Okay, and now come the onions. With onions, it's always really important that you use just as many onions as meat. The onions will thicken the sauce and give the goulash a smooth, velvety flavor. And that's really extremely important. As you can see, I have a large pile of onions to slice very thinly. Just cut them in half, lay them on the cut side, and then slice them into strips about this thick. I always set the last little piece, the root end, aside because it tastes a bit woody. If you have a slicer at home, you can just use a slicer or a so-called mandolin, a grater, which works really well for this, because after a while you'll probably start to tear up a bit. Those were the onions, and as you can see, I'm already tearing up. You can now begin the goulash base. I've preheated a pot until it's really hot on full blast, and now I'm adding a splash of oil. You'll see the oil start bubbling immediately. That's exactly right when you're searing the meat, and then you add the meat all at once. Spread it out briefly, and it's very important not to stir it now. Just wait a moment, let it sear, and then turn it over. It should get a nice roasted color. It's also important to add salt and pepper immediately when searing. Okay, that's enough for the first side. Now just a bit more. Stir it a little. And you can already see the pieces have just taken on a bit of color. That's why we need to make the pot really hot, because now the heat is almost gone again, so preheat it properly. Once everything is nicely seared, we can add the onions. It seems like a lot now, but they'll cook down into the goulash and disappear. We need to let that fry for about 3 or 4 minutes now, until the onions are a bit sautéed, then we can continue with the spices. That has fried for a few minutes now. You can see the juice that came out is almost gone. The onions are slightly cooked, which is how they should look. And now we can add the tomato paste. It's very important to add it right away. It has quite a lot of acidity, and the acidity will cook out. If we saute it a little together, that's how the onions are. Then we can already add our paprika powder. It's also good if it can fry a little bit with it. I have 2 different ones here. One is a sweet paprika and the other is a hot paprika. I really like it when a goulash is a bit spicier and has a bit of kick. If you don't like it spicy, just use sweet paprika. Okay. Stir well to evenly distribute the tomato paste, then fry briefly. You can already see how the onions have almost cooked down by half, so all the water is already gone. And now from that huge pile of onions we chopped, there's really only a tiny bit left. That's exactly how it should look, nicely coated with the paprika powder and the tomato paste. Now first we add the red wine, deglaze it with the red wine and let the red wine reduce a bit before we add the other ingredients. Now let it reduce for another 2 minutes so that some of the red wine evaporates. And then we can add the remaining spices and the broth, and then we can get started on the Spätzle dough. That has cooked for 2 minutes now, the red wine has reduced a bit, now I'm adding the beef broth. It's important to use a homemade one. If you don't have any, use organic store beef broth. At least it doesn't have flavor enhancers or similar additives. Then I add a bay leaf. Add a bit of caraway or leave it out if you don't like it. But a bit of caraway gives the goulash a really great flavor. And the garlic and the lemon zest, they only go in after about half the cooking time. That takes about an hour to 90 minutes, depending on the quality of the meat. And after 45 minutes, we add the lemon zest and the garlic, simply so that the fresh aroma of the lemon really stays until we eat it. If we add it now, the lemon aroma will cook out and we won't have any left. We might as well skip it. While the goulash simmers, we'll prepare the Spätzle dough. I have some regular type 405 flour here for that. I have the bowl here. Then add a bit of salt and pepper. Freshly grated nutmeg is essential for Spätzle dough. I avoid buying ground nutmeg since it doesn't taste as good. Go ahead, be generous. And now we're adding whole eggs, so the entire egg yolk and white. Shell, Always check that no shell gets in when cracking eggs, or you'll have shell in your Spätzle, which is odd. And now we'll carefully stir this into a dough with a wooden spoon so that all the flour doesn't spill out. I have some cold water here. If it's too firm, add a splash of water. So, now you're getting the right consistency. It should be a bit creamy. And now it's important that you beat the Spätzle dough. That means you take the spoon and really hit the dough. This helps remove the remaining lumps and thickens the mixture as the starch is worked from the flour. And that way we can press it well through the Spätzle grater later. I'll show you that now. You can see it get smoother each time I stir. The key is that it forms bubbles. You'll see later. It's ready when small bubbles appear. See how the bubbles slowly rise when you've beaten it a little bit? You can see that quite well here now. And that's also the right consistency for the dough. It has to be just tough enough to pull a few strings like this. That way, it'll be easier for us to use the press later. Okay, now we'll cover it with some plastic wrap and let it rest for about 20 minutes so it can settle. The dough can be grated directly into the hot water. Now we've boiled some water for the Spätzle. The Spätzle dough has rested a bit, and now we can run the Spätzle directly through the grater. I have a so-called Knöpfler grater here. It just makes small Spätzle. There's also a Spaetzle press, which looks similar to a potato riker, and with that you get more like noodles, slightly longer Spätzle. I'm going to place it on the boiling water now. I've salted the boiling water generously. And now I'm putting half of the dough into this hopper. Just like that. And now I'm just grating the Spätzle over this hopper here, directly into the boiling water. And that's really all I have to do. I've also prepared some ice water, just a bit of water with a few ice cubes in it, where I'll briefly cool down the Spätzle in a moment. This stops the cooking, then I quickly toss them in butter. We just need to bring them to a boil once. They're done since they're so small. Okay, now we've brought them to a boil once, and now we'll briefly put them into ice water to cool them down. Okay, now the second seam. Scrape out the dough well, don't waste any. And now rub this one into the water again. I'll give you one more tip about Spaetzle dough. Once you've done that and all the tools you've used, whether it's the Spaetzle press or the cooking spoon, and also rinse the pots right after. Because once the dough dries a little, it won't come off at all. So don't put it in the dishwasher or anywhere it has time to dry, just rinse it right away under running water. That's the easiest way to clean it. The second batch has boiled, so let's cool it down quickly too. If you don't have any ice cubes at home, you can also use a small freezer pack to cool it down, like one of those blue packs that you always put in picnic boxes. That also works to chill the water. Just rinse it first to remove any dirt. Now let's let them cool down in there for a bit, then we can drain them and just leave them until the goulash is ready. That'll take about another 45 minutes. We can put it in the fridge for a bit and then just toss it in butter once more. And then the Spaetzle will be ready. Let me show you the goulash in the meantime. It's been cooking for about 40 to 45 minutes now. It's already nice and creamy, and you can still see the onions. So it will take a little longer until it's done. But now we can already add this fresh garlic and the lemon zest. Let's go outside. The parsley is for the Spaetzle later. We'll stir that in now. That will give a really great lemony aroma. And now put the lid back on and let it simmer quietly for another 40 to 45 minutes. Cooking time for goulash varies with meat quality. Sometimes it's ready in an hour, other times it takes an hour and a half. Try a small piece to check if it's still tough or chewy. When it melts on your tongue, it's done. So now the goulash has cooked for about 70 to 75 minutes. With this meat quality, that was just right. It's buttery soft and very tender. I've already prepared a pan. Let me show you the consistency now. As we said before, the onions should be completely cooked down, so you can't see any of our onion rings anymore. They've basically thickened the sauce completely, which is why it's so nice and creamy. We didn't add anything, no thickener or anything, that's just from the onions. Meanwhile, I've set up a pan, and now I'm going to quickly warm up the Spaetzle with a bit of butter. For that, I'll add plenty of butter to the pan. No problem. If the butter browns, it's called brown butter. It just shouldn't turn black, because if it does, it tastes a bit unpleasant and bitter. And now right away, I've drained the Spaetzle and let them drip off a bit. And now we'll add them, still a little wet, directly into the butter. Immediately season with salt and pepper. We'll warm them up in butter. The goulash is ready and tastes fantastic. Try it again to check the salt. It has a delicate lemon scent from the lemon zest we used earlier. This slow, gentle cooking makes the meat so tender it melts in your mouth. I forgot one thing. If the cooking process gets a bit too thick, just add a splash of water and cook it out again. That's no problem at all. You just have to make sure it doesn't burn. Let's also add our freshly chopped parsley to the Spätzle. That looks great, has good contrast, and tastes delicious. And now we can start plating. Let's use a deep plate since it's so saucy. And now I'll just put a spoonful of our nice parsley Spaetzle in there, or maybe even a little more. We'll use the ladle to make a small well in the center, then turn it so they move to the edge. And right into this well, I'll now add a nice big ladle of our goulash. A bit more. Then it looks delicious. If you like, you can stick a little parsley leaf on top as decoration and then serve it right away. Enjoy your meal, have fun. Ciao.